Maya was a young girl who lived in a small village at the edge of a great forest, and she always dreamed of adventure beyond the tall trees that surrounded her home. Her grandmother often told her stories about a hidden valley where strange creatures lived and where the rivers flowed with water that sparkled like diamonds under the sunlight. And Maya listened to every word with wide eyes full of wonder. One morning, Maya woke up before the sun had fully risen over the mountains, and she felt something different in the air. The birds were singing a song she had never heard before, and the wind carried a sweet smell that reminded her of honey and wildflowers. She jumped out of her bed and ran to the window, where she saw something that made her heart beat faster than ever before. A small blue butterfly with wings that glowed like the moon was sitting on her windowsill, and it seemed to be waiting for her. Maya had never seen anything like it in all her 12 years of life, and she knew deep in her heart that this was the beginning of something magical. She quickly put on her clothes and grabbed her old brown bag that her father had given her before he went away on his long journey 3 years ago. The butterfly flew into the forest, and Maya followed it without thinking twice about the danger that might wait for her among the ancient trees. Her grandmother had warned her many times about the forest and the creatures that lived there, but Maya felt brave and curious, and she could not let this chance pass her by. The morning light filtered through the leaves above her head, creating patterns of gold and green on the forest floor. She walked for what seemed like hours, following the glowing butterfly deeper and deeper into the woods, and the trees grew taller and older the further she went. Strange mushrooms of purple and orange grew on the tree trunks, and she could hear the sound of water rushing somewhere in the distance. Maya was not afraid because the butterfly always stayed close enough for her to see its beautiful blue light. Suddenly, the butterfly stopped at the entrance of a dark cave that was hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines, and Maya felt her stomach turn with nervous excitement. The cave mouth was tall enough for her to walk through without bending, and she could see a faint golden light coming from somewhere deep inside. She took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness, trusting the butterfly to guide her safely. The cave walls were covered with crystals that reflected the butterfly's glow and created 1,000 points of light all around her. Maya touched one of the crystals, and it felt warm under her fingers, almost as if it was alive. She continued walking, and the path twisted and turned like a snake moving through tall grass. But she never felt lost because the butterfly was always there. After walking for a long time in the crystal cave, Maya finally saw an opening ahead that was filled with bright sunlight. She ran toward it with excitement building in her chest, and when she stepped out of the cave, she gasped at what she saw before her. It was the hidden valley from her grandmother's stories, and it was more beautiful than anything she had ever imagined. Green hills rolled across the land like gentle waves on a calm sea, and flowers of every color covered the ground as far as she could see. In the center of the valley stood a great tree that was taller than any building Maya had ever seen, and its leaves were silver and gold. Rivers wound through the valley like blue ribbons, and she could see small houses made of stone and wood scattered across the hills. Maya noticed that she was not alone in this magical place, and her heart jumped when she saw creatures moving among the flowers. They were small beings, no taller than her knee, with pointed ears and skin that changed color depending on the light. One of them spotted her and let out a surprised squeak before running away to hide behind a large purple flower. She wanted to tell them that she meant no harm, but before she could speak, a voice came from behind her. Maya spun around and saw an old man with a long white beard and kind blue eyes standing at the cave entrance. He wore a cloak made of leaves and carried a wooden staff that was decorated with the same glowing crystals she had seen inside the cave. "Welcome to the Valley of Whispers, young traveler," the old man said, with a gentle smile on his wrinkled face. "We have been expecting you for a very long time, and there is much that you need to know about why you are here." Maya did not understand what he meant, but she felt that she could trust this strange old man who seemed to know her. The old man introduced himself as Orin, and he explained that he was the keeper of the valley and had lived there for more than 300 years. Maya found it hard to believe that anyone could live for so long. But after seeing the glowing butterfly and the crystal cave and this magical valley, she was ready to believe in anything. Orin told her to follow him to the great silver tree, where he would explain everything. As they walked through the valley, the small creatures came out of their hiding places and watched Maya with curious eyes. Some of them waved at her shyly, and she waved back with a big smile on her face. Orin told her that these creatures were called the Lumini, and they had lived in the valley since the beginning of time itself. They were the guardians of nature, and helped keep the balance between the magical world and the ordinary world. Maya had so many questions that she wanted to ask, but Orin walked quickly, and she had to focus on keeping up with his long strides. The great tree grew larger and larger as they approached it, and Maya could now see that its trunk was wider than her entire house back in the village. Birds with feathers of rainbow colors sat on its branches and sang songs that filled her heart with joy. When they finally reached the base of the great tree, Orin turned to face Maya with a serious expression that made her feel nervous. He told her that the valley was in danger, and that an ancient darkness was awakening in the mountains to the north. The Lumini were scared, and the animals had started to flee to safer lands, and soon the darkness would spread to the world outside the valley. Maya did not know what she could do to help, but she felt deep in her heart that this was why the butterfly had come to her window that morning. Orin led Maya to a door that was carved into the trunk of the great silver tree, and she could not believe her eyes when she stepped inside. The inside of the tree was hollow and filled with rooms that spiraled upward like a staircase reaching toward the sky. Shelves lined the walls and were filled with old books, strange bottles, and objects that Maya had never seen before in her life. "This is my home," Orin said, as he hung his leaf cloak on a hook near the door, and Maya looked around with wonder at everything she saw. A small fire burned in a fireplace that was made of smooth river stones, and comfortable chairs sat in front of it. The old man gestured for Maya to sit down, and she sank into the soft cushions with a happy sigh after her long walk through the forest and the cave. Orin prepared 2 cups of tea from a plant that grew in a pot by the window, and the smell was sweet like summer berries. He handed 1 cup to Maya and sat down in the chair across from her, his old bones creaking as he settled into place. Maya took a sip of the tea and felt warmth spread through her entire body, making her feel calm and safe. "Now, let me tell you the story of this valley, and why you have been brought here today," Orin began, and his voice was low and serious. "Long ago, before your grandmother's grandmother was born, this valley was part of the ordinary world, and humans and Lumini lived together in peace and harmony. But then a great evil came from the darkness beyond the mountains, and everything changed forever." Maya listened carefully as Orin told her about a shadow creature called Moros, who had tried to destroy all the light in the world. Moros hated everything that was beautiful and good, and he wanted to cover the entire earth in eternal darkness. The Lumini had fought against him with all their magic, but they were small, and their power was limited. It seemed like all hope was lost, until a young girl from Maya's own village had come to the valley. "That girl was your grandmother, Maya," Orin said, and Maya nearly dropped her teacup in surprise at these words. "She was about your age when she first found the valley, and she had the same curious spirit and brave heart that I see in you." Orin smiled at the memory, but his face soon grew sad again. "Your grandmother helped us defeat Moros and trap him in a prison of light deep beneath the northern mountains." Maya could not believe what she was hearing, because her grandmother had never mentioned any of this. All those bedtime stories about the hidden valley and magical creatures had been real, and her grandmother had actually lived through those adventures. Maya felt proud of her grandmother, but she also felt worried about what Orin would say next. "For many years, the prison held strong, and we thought that Moros would never escape," Orin continued, his blue eyes growing dark with concern. "But the magic that keeps him trapped is fading, and we can feel his darkness growing stronger every day. The Lumini have nightmares about shadows with red eyes, and the animals can sense that something terrible is coming. We need someone with the same power that your grandmother had to stop Moros before he breaks free." Maya shook her head and told Orin that she was just an ordinary girl with no special powers or magic. She had never done anything brave in her whole life, and she did not know how she could possibly defeat an ancient evil. Orin reached out and took her hand in his, and his grip was warm and reassuring. "The power is inside you, Maya, even if you cannot feel it yet," he said gently. "It runs in your family like a river that never stops flowing, and it has been waiting for the right moment to wake up. Your grandmother saw it in you when you were just a baby, and she knew that one day you would come here to finish what she started." Before Maya could respond, the door of the treehouse burst open, and a Lumini came running inside. Its skin was flashing bright red, which Maya guessed meant that something was very wrong. The little creature spoke in a high, squeaky voice, and pointed toward the north with a trembling finger. Orin jumped to his feet, faster than Maya thought an old man could move. "The shadow wolves have crossed the border," Orin said with alarm in his voice, and Maya felt fear grip her heart. "Moros is testing the boundaries of his prison, sending his creatures to scout the valley. We must act quickly before he grows any stronger." He grabbed his staff and headed for the door, and Maya followed him, even though her legs felt weak with fear. Outside, the Lumini had gathered in large groups and were talking nervously among themselves. The sky to the north had grown dark, even though it was still the middle of the day, and Maya could see lightning flashing in the distance. A cold wind blew across the valley, making the beautiful flowers bend and shake. Maya pulled her jacket tighter around her body and tried to stop herself from shivering. Orin stood on a rock and raised his staff high above his head, and the crystal on top began to glow with brilliant white light. The Lumini fell silent and turned to look at him with hope in their large eyes. He spoke to them in their own language, which sounded like the tinkling of small bells, and they seemed to calm down a little. Maya wished she could understand what he was saying. When Orin finished speaking, he climbed down from the rock and walked over to Maya with a determined look on his face. He told her that they had to begin her training right away because they did not have much time. The shadow wolves would not attack tonight, but they would return soon with greater numbers and greater strength. Maya needed to learn how to use her hidden power before that happened. "But I do not know how to use magic," Maya protested, feeling overwhelmed by everything that was happening so fast. "What if I am not the person you think I am? And what if I cannot do the things my grandmother did?" Orin placed his hand on her shoulder and looked into her eyes with kindness and understanding. "Your grandmother felt the same way when she first came here, and she doubted herself many times along the way. But she found her courage when she needed it most, and I believe that you will find yours too. The magic chose you, Maya, and it would not have brought you here if you were not ready to accept it." Maya took a deep breath and nodded her head, even though she still felt scared inside. Orin led her to a clearing near the great tree, where a circle of white stones was arranged on the ground. He told Maya to stand in the center of the circle and close her eyes, and she did as he asked. She could hear the wind blowing through the leaves and the Lumini whispering somewhere nearby, and she tried to focus her mind. Look inside yourself and find the light that burns in your heart, Orin instructed in a soft voice. That light is your power, and it has been with you since the day you were born. Feel it growing stronger and brighter, like a fire that cannot be put out. Maya concentrated as hard as she could, and suddenly she felt something warm stirring deep inside her chest. Maya kept her eyes closed and focused on the warm feeling in her chest, and it grew stronger with every breath she took. The warmth spread through her body like sunshine filling a dark room, and she could feel energy tingling in her fingertips and toes. The Lumini gasped in amazement, and Maya opened her eyes to see why they were so surprised. Her hands were glowing with a soft golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat, and Maya stared at them with a mixture of wonder and fear. The light did not hurt her at all, and in fact, it made her feel stronger and more alive than she had ever felt before. Orin smiled broadly and clapped his hands together with joy at what he was seeing. "You have found your power, Maya," he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with happiness. "The light recognizes you as its master, and it will obey your commands if you learn to control it. This is the same power that your grandmother used to defeat Moros all those years ago." Maya moved her hands through the air and watched as the golden light left trails behind like ribbons of sunlight. For the next 3 days, Orin taught Maya how to use her newfound abilities, and she learned quickly. She discovered that she could make the light form different shapes, from simple balls of brightness to shields that could block attacks. She could also send the light flying through the air like arrows, and when it hit a target, it would explode in a shower of sparks. The Lumini watched her practice with admiration in their color-changing eyes. On the 4th day, Maya was practicing near the river when she heard a scream coming from the hills to the east. She ran toward the sound without thinking, and found a young Lumini trapped under a fallen branch that was too heavy for it to lift. Without hesitating, Maya summoned her power and used the light to cut through the branch, freeing the frightened creature. The Lumini hugged her leg and thanked her in its squeaky voice. This Lumini was named Pip, and it became Maya's loyal friend and companion from that day forward. Pip was different from the other Lumini because it was braver and more adventurous, and it loved to explore the valley. It showed Maya secret paths through the flowers, and taught her which berries were safe to eat, and which ones would give her a stomachache. Maya was grateful to have a friend in this strange new world. But the happiness did not last long, because the shadow wolves returned on the 5th night, and this time there were many more of them. Maya was sleeping in a small room inside the great tree when she was woken by the sound of howling that made her blood run cold. She jumped out of bed and ran outside to find the valley in chaos, with Lumini running and screaming in terror. The shadow wolves were terrifying creatures made of pure darkness, with eyes that burned red like hot coals in a fire. They slipped through the night like smoke, and their howls echoed off the mountains that surrounded the valley. Orin was at the edge of the village, holding back the wolves with blasts of light from his staff, but Maya could see that he was growing tired. She ran to his side and raised her hands, letting the golden light pour out of her like water from a fountain. The light crashed into the shadow wolves and made them scatter and howl with pain. Maya had never used so much power at once, and she felt her strength draining from her body, but she refused to stop. The Lumini needed her, and she would not let them down. Together Maya and Orin fought the shadow wolves, until the creatures finally retreated back into the darkness of the northern mountains. The battle had lasted for hours, and when it was over, Maya collapsed onto the ground from exhaustion. Orin knelt beside her and helped her sit up, and Pip brought her water to drink. "You did wonderfully, Maya," Orin said proudly, but his face was also troubled. However, this attack was only a test, and Moros will send something much worse next time. His prison is weakening faster than I feared, and we cannot wait any longer. Maya asked him what they should do, and Orin told her something that filled her heart with dread. They had to go to the northern mountains and strengthen the prison before Moros could escape completely. The journey would be dangerous, and they would have to pass through the dark forest where no light could reach. Maya did not want to go, but she knew that she had no choice if she wanted to save the valley and everyone in it. The next morning, Maya, Orin, and Pip gathered supplies for their journey and said goodbye to the Lumini. The little creatures gave them gifts of food and magical items that might help them along the way. One Lumini gave Maya a small crystal that would glow brighter when danger was near, and another gave Pip a tiny sword made of silver. Maya thanked them all and promised that she would return safely. They set off toward the north, following a path that wound through the green hills and past the sparkling rivers. The weather was beautiful at first, with sunshine and warm breezes that carried the smell of flowers. But as they walked further from the great silver tree, the sky began to grow darker, and the air grew colder. Maya pulled her cloak tighter and tried to stay positive. By the afternoon, they had reached the edge of the dark forest, and Maya understood why it had such a frightening name. The trees were black and twisted, and their branches reached out like bony fingers, trying to grab anything that passed by. No birds sang in these woods, and no animals moved among the shadows. Even Orin seemed nervous as he looked into the darkness ahead. "Stay close to me, and do not stray from the path," Orin warned in a serious voice. "The dark forest is full of tricks and illusions that will try to lead you away. Trust only what you can touch, and ignore anything that calls your name." Maya nodded and took Pip's small hand in her own, and together they stepped into the forest. The darkness swallowed them immediately, and Maya could barely see Orin walking just a few feet in front of her. She summoned a small ball of light to help them see, and the shadows seemed to pull back from its glow. Strange sounds came from all around them, whispers and laughs and crying that seemed to have no source. Maya's crystal began to glow faintly, warning her that danger was everywhere. They walked for what felt like forever through the twisting paths of the dark forest, and Maya lost all sense of time and direction. Sometimes she thought she heard her grandmother's voice calling her name, but she remembered Orin's warning and did not follow it. Pip clutched her hand tightly and trembled with fear, and Maya tried to be brave for both of them. Suddenly, Maya heard a sound that was different from the other noises in the forest, a deep growling that made the ground shake beneath her feet. She raised her light higher and saw something massive moving between the trees ahead, something with glowing red eyes and teeth as long as her arm. It was not a shadow wolf, but something much bigger and much more dangerous. "Run!" Orin shouted, and Maya did not need to be told twice. Maya grabbed Pip and ran as fast as her legs could carry her through the twisted trees of the dark forest. The massive creature behind them crashed through the branches and roared with a sound that shook leaves from the trees. Orin was surprisingly fast for an old man, and he led them down a narrow path that wound between rocks and fallen logs. The creature was getting closer with every second, and Maya could feel its hot breath on the back of her neck. She turned and threw a blast of golden light at it, and the creature stumbled and howled with pain. But it did not stop, and it seemed even angrier than before as it continued to chase them through the darkness. "There is a cave ahead where we can hide," Orin shouted over his shoulder, and Maya could see a small opening in a rocky hillside. They ran toward it and squeezed through the entrance just as the creature reached out with its massive claws. The opening was too small for the beast to follow, and it roared in frustration outside. Maya, Orin, and Pip huddled together in the darkness of the cave, and tried to catch their breath. The creature paced back and forth outside, scraping its claws against the rocks and growling with anger. Maya's heart was pounding so hard that she could hear it in her ears, and Pip was shaking like a leaf in a storm. That was a shadow beast, one of Moros's most powerful servants, Orin explained, when he had enough breath to speak. They are born from pure darkness and fear nothing except the strongest light. We were lucky to escape with our lives. Maya looked at the cave entrance and saw the red eyes of the beast glowing in the darkness outside. They waited for hours in that cold cave, listening to the shadow beast prowling and growling. Maya tried to stay awake, but exhaustion finally caught up with her, and she fell asleep with her head resting against the stone wall. When she woke up, the beast was gone, and pale gray light was filtering through the cave entrance. Orin said that they needed to keep moving, because they were still far from the mountains where Moros was imprisoned. Maya was tired and scared, but she forced herself to stand up and continue the journey. Pip sat on her shoulder and whispered words of encouragement in her ear, and she felt grateful for her small friend. The rest of the dark forest passed without any more attacks, though Maya never stopped feeling like something was watching them from the shadows. When they finally emerged from the trees, she saw the northern mountains rising up before them like giants made of stone. Snow covered their peaks, and dark clouds swirled around them in an endless dance. The prison of Moros lies deep beneath the tallest mountain, Orin said, pointing his staff toward a peak that seemed to pierce the sky itself. We must reach it before the next full moon, or the magic that holds him will break completely. Maya looked at the mountain and felt doubt creeping into her heart. It seemed so far away and so impossible to climb. They began their journey up the mountain, following a path that had been carved into the rock many years ago. The wind grew colder and sharper as they climbed higher, and soon Maya could see her breath forming clouds in the air. Her fingers grew numb inside her gloves, and her feet ached from walking on the hard stone. Pip had never felt such cold before, and the little Lumini's skin turned a pale blue color. Maya tucked Pip inside her jacket to keep her friend warm, and she could feel the small creature's heartbeat against her chest. She would not let anything happen to Pip, no matter how difficult the journey became. On the second day of climbing, they found a small hut built into the side of the mountain, and Orin said they could rest there for the night. The hut was old and dusty, but it had a fireplace and some dry wood, and soon they had a warm fire crackling in the hearth. Maya sat close to the flames and let the heat soak into her frozen bones. While they rested, Orin told Maya more about her grandmother and the first battle against Moros. He said that her grandmother had been scared too, even more scared than Maya, but she had found courage in the love she had for her family and friends. She had fought not because she was fearless, but because she knew that some things were worth fighting for. Your grandmother told me something before she left the valley for the last time, Orin said with a faraway look in his eyes. She said that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important than fear. Maya thought about these words and felt them settle into her heart like seeds waiting to grow. The next morning, they continued their climb, and the path grew steeper and more dangerous with every step. In some places, they had to use ropes to pull themselves up cliffs, and in others, they had to walk along narrow ledges with nothing but empty air below. Maya tried not to look down, but sometimes she could not help herself, and the height made her head spin. By the afternoon, they finally reached a great stone door that was carved with symbols and pictures Maya did not understand. The door was as tall as 3 houses stacked on top of each other, and it seemed to pulse with a dark energy that made Maya feel sick. This was the entrance to the prison of Moros. Orin placed his hand on the door and began to speak words in a language that Maya had never heard before. The symbols on the door began to glow with a faint blue light, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Slowly, the great stone door began to open, revealing a staircase that led down into absolute darkness. "This is as far as I can go with you, Maya," Orin said, and his voice was heavy with sadness. "The magic inside will only respond to someone of your bloodline, and I would only get in your way. You must go alone and find the heart of the prison where the binding spell was cast." Maya felt panic rising in her chest at the thought of going into that darkness by herself. Pip jumped off Maya's shoulder and stood on the ground with a determined expression on its tiny face. The little Lumini squeaked and pointed at itself, then at Maya, making it clear that it would not let her go alone. Orin smiled and said that the magic would allow Pip to enter because the Lumini were part of the original spell. Maya hugged Orin tightly and thanked him for everything he had taught her and done for her. The old man's eyes were wet with tears as he told her how proud he was and how proud her grandmother would be. He gave her a small vial filled with glowing liquid and said it was the last of his strongest light magic, to be used only in the greatest need. With one last look at Orin, Maya took Pip's hand and began walking down the stone stairs into the darkness. The door closed behind them with a heavy sound that echoed through the tunnel, and Maya summoned her light to push back the shadows. The stairs went down and down forever, and the air grew warm and thick with something that smelled like smoke and anger. At the bottom of the stairs, Maya found herself in a vast underground chamber, lit by rivers of glowing red liquid that flowed through channels in the floor. In the center of the chamber stood a cage made of pure white light, and inside that cage was something that made Maya's blood freeze in her veins. She had found Moros, and he had been waiting for her. Moros was a creature made of living shadow, with a form that shifted and changed like smoke in the wind. His eyes burned with red fire, and when he smiled, Maya could see teeth as sharp as knives glinting in the darkness. The cage of light that held him flickered and pulsed weakly, and Maya could see cracks forming in its surface. "So, the granddaughter has finally come," Moros spoke, and his voice was like ice sliding down Maya's spine. "I have been waiting for you, little one, dreaming of this moment for so many long years. Your grandmother thought she had defeated me, but she only delayed the inevitable." He laughed, and the sound made the walls tremble and the red rivers bubble. Maya tried to look brave, but her hands were shaking, and her heart was racing with fear. She had never faced anything so terrifying in her whole life, and she did not know if she had the strength to stop him. Pip pressed against her leg and squeaked encouragingly, and Maya remembered that she was not completely alone. "I will not let you escape," Maya said, and she was surprised by how strong her voice sounded. "My grandmother stopped you before, and I will stop you again." She raised her hands and let the golden light flow through her, forming a bright shield in front of her body. Moros watched with amusement in his burning eyes. "Your grandmother was powerful, but she made one mistake," Moros hissed, pressing his smoky hands against the walls of his cage. "She did not destroy me when she had the chance, and now I have had years to grow stronger. Soon I will break free from this prison, and then I will cover your precious valley in eternal darkness." The cage cracked more, and a piece of light fell away like glass shattering. Maya knew she had to act quickly before Moros could escape completely. She looked around the chamber and saw 4 pillars standing at the corners, each one carved with the same symbols she had seen on the door. Orin had told her to find the heart of the prison, and she realized that these pillars must be connected to the binding spell. She ran toward the nearest pillar while Moros roared with anger and reached through the cracks in his cage. His shadowy hand swiped at her, but she dodged and kept running. Pip ran beside her, its little legs moving as fast as they could. Maya reached the pillar and placed her hands on its surface, and she felt the ancient magic humming beneath the stone. "You cannot repair the prison," Moros screamed, his voice filled with rage and desperation. "The spell is broken beyond fixing, and there is nothing you can do to stop me now." But Maya did not believe him, because she could feel the magic responding to her touch. It recognized her blood, just like Orin had said it would. She closed her eyes and pushed her light into the pillar, and the symbols began to glow brighter than they had in years. The pillar hummed with energy, and she could feel the binding spell growing stronger. But it was not enough, because one pillar alone could not hold Moros. She needed to reach all four. Moros broke through the cage with a terrible scream, and his shadow form expanded to fill the chamber. Maya ran toward the second pillar, as darkness swirled around her and tried to pull her down. She held her light close to her body like a shield, and pushed through the shadows. Her lungs burned and her muscles ached, but she refused to give up. She reached the second pillar and poured her light into it, and again the symbols glowed bright. Moros was fully free now, and he flew toward her with claws extended and teeth bared. Maya dove out of the way just in time, and Pip threw its tiny silver sword at the shadow creature. The sword passed right through Moros, but it distracted him long enough for Maya to reach the third pillar. 3 pillars were now glowing, and Maya could feel the binding spell pulling at Moros, trying to trap him again. The shadow creature howled with frustration and sent waves of darkness crashing toward Maya. She raised her shield and blocked the attack, but the force pushed her backward and nearly knocked her down. She was growing tired, and her light was starting to dim. "Give up, child," Moros growled as he loomed over her like a mountain of shadow. "You do not have enough power to complete the spell. Your grandmother barely managed to trap me when she was at full strength, and you are just a weak little girl." His words cut into Maya's heart, and for a moment she believed them. Maybe she really was too weak to save anyone. But then Pip squeaked loudly and pointed at the vial that Orin had given Maya, the one filled with the strongest light magic. Maya had forgotten about it in the chaos of the battle, and now she understood what she had to do. She pulled the vial from her pocket and held it up, and the light inside sparkled like a captured star. "My grandmother taught me that courage is not the absence of fear," Maya shouted as she threw the vial at Moros. "It is the decision that something else is more important than fear." The vial shattered against the shadow creature, and brilliant white light exploded throughout the chamber. Moros screamed as the light burned away his darkness. Maya ran with all her remaining strength toward the fourth pillar, her feet pounding against the stone floor. Moros was weakened but not defeated, and he reached for her with his remaining shadows. She felt cold fingers grasp her ankle, but she kicked free and threw herself at the pillar. Her hands slammed against the stone, and she released every last drop of light she had inside her. The fourth pillar blazed to life, and the binding spell activated with a sound like thunder rolling across the sky. Golden chains of light shot out from each pillar and wrapped around Moros, pulling him back toward the center of the chamber. The shadow creature fought and struggled, but the spell was too strong. A new cage of light formed around him, brighter and stronger than the one before. "No!" Moros screamed as the cage sealed shut around him, trapping him once more in a prison of pure light. "I will escape again, and when I do, I will destroy everything you love." But his voice grew weaker and weaker, until it was nothing more than a distant whisper, and then silence filled the chamber. Maya collapsed onto the ground, completely exhausted and barely able to move. Pip rushed over and hugged her face, squeaking with joy and relief. They had done it. They had really done it. Moros was trapped again, and the valley was safe. Tears of happiness rolled down Maya's cheeks as she lay there on the cold stone floor. When she finally found the strength to climb back up the stairs, she found Orin waiting for her with the biggest smile she had ever seen. He hugged her tightly and told her that she was the bravest person he had ever known. Maya blushed and said she could not have done it without Pip and without Orin's gift of light magic. They returned to the Valley of Whispers as heroes, and the Lumini celebrated for 7 days and 7 nights. There was music and dancing and the most delicious food Maya had ever tasted. The great silver tree bloomed with flowers of every color, and the rivers sparkled brighter than ever before. Maya had never felt so happy and proud in her entire life. But eventually, Maya knew it was time to go home to her village and her grandmother. Orin gave her a special crystal that would allow her to return to the valley whenever she wanted, and Pip announced that it wanted to come live in Maya's world. Maya was overjoyed because she had been afraid of leaving her best friend behind. When Maya finally walked through her front door, her grandmother was sitting by the fireplace with tears in her eyes. The old woman hugged Maya tight and said she had known all along that this day would come. She had seen the light in Maya from the moment she was born, and she had always believed that her granddaughter would be the one to finish what she had started. Maya sat down with her grandmother and told her everything that had happened in the Hidden Valley. The old woman listened with wonder and pride, and when Maya finished, her grandmother smiled and said that the valley had chosen well. Maya knew that her adventures were not over, but for now, she was content to be home with her family and her new friend Pip. And somewhere, deep beneath the northern mountains, trapped in a cage of unbreakable light, Moros slept and dreamed of shadows, waiting for a day that would never come.